Yeah.
See.
Do some dance steps or, you know. Yeah, I graduated twice, so I got 2 bachelors from CSUN. Psychology and English. So, might ask why I'm in supply chain and operations. It's a good question. I think it shows that regardless of your degree, you can be successful in almost any field if you leverage the skills that you develop, as you get that degree. So surprisingly for psychology, I had to take several years of advanced statistics, which actually paid off fairly well as far as operations and supply chain. The English major, being able to write clear and persuasive papers and to be able to explain yourself pays off, period, when it comes to management, when it comes to presenting things to executive management. So really, over the years, I found it's as important how you leverage what you're learning in school, as important as what kind of degree focus you get. Because for sure, and when I went through CSUN, they didn't have a SUN major. I don't even think they had an operations major at the time. So it was just a general business admin major, I think, at the time. So over time, the schools have developed much more focused degrees, which I think are very beneficial and are very attractive for companies that employ interns and also graduates. I like, getting in interns, and we'll talk a little bit about internships. But I like getting in interns. One is they're fun to work with. 2, there's a selfish motive, which is developing a pipeline of potential employees. Because once you get them as an intern, they typically like the environment, the company, the industry, and they typically stick around. So as we'll talk about a few of the previous CSUN interns, they had no intention of going into aerospace or biomed. But once they got a taste of it, they did very well. And several of them are now off working for Lockheed. In fact, Sheba the guy, she's a graduate from the school, and she's now in the UK working for Lockheed. So she started as an intern over at Wesco. Hi there. Wesco Aerospace, which is aerospace distributor up in Valencia. And she leveraged that into several positions and really with a very, very large aerospace company and enjoying the heck of it. So I think it just shows that you need to leverage these internships as an opportunity to explore what kind of opportunities there are and also to show what you can do. Not that I'm promoting aerospace or biomed or whatever. It's just that I think a lot of students, as they graduate, are thinking I'm going to work for Apple, Google, whatever the heck it is. And they're not exploring these other opportunities, which are right in their own backyard. That could be very lucrative, a lot of fun, very interesting, and they actually value very much your skill sets. So we've got, for those coming in late, we've got some books that the local APICS chapter has stumped up for. I can be the author. But these are focused really on helping students, the reason I wrote it, helping students to understand really what I'm looking for as a hiring manager and how to meet, I guess, my expectations when they prepare for the interview, go into the interview, do their LinkedIn page, all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, that was a quick little start. All right, so we'll cover a few things depending on how long you guys stick around, because I know a few people have to check out and go to industry night. I thought every night was industry night. But, so here's some of my background again. I've got degrees in things that are not business or SOM related, but I've done very well in operations, aerospace, biomed. I've run factories. And as I was sharing earlier, the degree is important, but how you leverage what you learned during your time of getting that degree is equally important. and your ability to articulate what you've learned is super critical, which I think is, something everybody needs to work on. That's why I explained it a little bit. All right, before I get too far, a couple freebies. You can download these at the App Store for iPhone or Android. These are APICS related things. One's a dictionary, one's for score. So I like free stuff, so I'm sharing. Okay, LinkedIn. So first question, how many of you have a LinkedIn account already? Anybody? Do you have good pictures? Have nice pictures? Okay. How's it possible? Oh, I'm sad. Okay, so what do you think this is? Some secret society I belong to? That's the number of connections I have. So 7,200. Why is that of concern? Well, how many connections do you guys have? Because you're all on LinkedIn, right?
Like 330.
330, that's good. That's really good.
About like 200.
200? Anybody at 5 or things like that? Meaning 5, not 500? 17, okay, good. All right, and I'm being a little jokey about it. All of my interns, actually, most of my employees, I tease them about, when are they going to get their connection numbers up? And the ones that are working for me, the company, I tease them because within the company, they've got built-in opportunity to network the heck out of it and get a lot of very easy connections. Since I've got so many, I'm a good connection. So this kind of works like a, not a dating service, but a social connection service. So if you're connected with me on a first level standpoint, meaning connected directly, you're a second level connection with my 7,000 connections. Now, that might not seem like any big deal, but my 7,000 connections, and we'll get to that, also have a pretty significant chunk of recruiters and HR hiring people. Okay, so if you don't have a profile set up, you should get one set up. Professional headshot, I've seen some pretty funky headshots. So I'm bugging my son to get his updated. He's got, dark beard thing going on. Okay, you should target getting connections, as we mentioned, 17, 300 is great. Target getting up to 100 at least, but I'd say target getting over the 500. So since I last spoke to this group here, I think I was in 6,700. So now I'm 7,200. That's a few months later. So every once in a while, I'll go in and just start asking to connect with recruiters. And I get a surprising number of acceptances tied into that, which benefits you guys too. And then for the about section, so I see some very thin about sections as far as the description. What I'd like to say is, again, this is your virtual resume in the 21st century. So, doing a good job on LinkedIn is something that's super visible to hiring managers, to VPs out there, to recruiters. They use this and the data behind it to do quick searches for certifications, degrees, what industry segment you're interested in. So all of that comes out of this virtual resume, and of course, just like YouTube or anything else, they use tags, they use keywords, and a lot of that is also, and we're not going to get into that, important to populate your digital resume with that. So if your current LinkedIn profile says, I go to school and I love surfing, it's kind of thin, so you need more than that. And if you've done things like work part-time jobs, done internships, that should be beefed up. Okay, so I'd recommend, again, connecting with me. This was my count as of yesterday, as far as connections. I've actually only been on LinkedIn since, I think, 2012. So it doesn't take that long to, to gin this up. Again, this is the important number for you guys. So I've got a huge number of recruiters and HR hiring managers connected with me. So I'm able to dig into that too if I want to. I just pulled it up to see what it was. But that's of significance because how else can you get exposed pretty easily to that number of recruiters as you graduate? I'm not aware of too many ways you can do that. Unless you start cranking. All right, so I set goals tied into this, and here's a few simple goals. Maybe exceed that 500, and 500 is the max it shows on your LinkedIn profile. So mine shows 500 plus. Obviously, I've got a few more. Fine tune your profile, which means if it's not really reflective of what you're capable of doing, update that information, and then put some samples of your work up. You can look at mine. I've got some presentations. I've got where I've spoken to groups, classes I've taught, posts I put up, things like that. Those are opportunities for you to show samples. And that shows up in this little book I'm handing out. Samples, when you go to interview, whether that's as an intern or a full-time job, samples are, in my opinion, critical. Because everybody coming in for an interview, it's this. And what's that? They talk. Which anybody can say whatever they want. Yes, I'm an Excel guru. Oh yeah, pivot tables. If you look up, I do that in my sleep. Can they really do it? I don't know. Unless they show me samples, or unless I hire them and find out after the fact, which I've done. And I'm not too happy when I find out that's not true after the fact. Can they do graphs? Can they do presentations? Are they articulate when they're writing reports? Bringing in samples of that kind of thing is huge. So having some samples from school is fine. Hey, here's a project I worked on, I led that project, and here's what it looked like. That's good. If you do an internship, keep samples of what you do while you're doing the internship, because you'll probably get assigned projects. You may have to do presentations to management, executive management. That's all good material for here. So again, this is all about impressing future employers, hiring managers to show them what you can do. And having a little thin resume is not that great. So now we have to have more. So when I go in for an interview, when I go to interview for a position, I bring in almost a little portfolio. Here's samples of what I did. Here's how I reduced inventory. Here's how I led this project. Here's how I did analysis. Here's how we did brainstorming. All of those kind of little samples I use when I talk to hiring VPs and COOs and things like that. So I walk the talk, and it works because it differentiates you from everybody else. Of course, if everybody starts doing this, we have to raise it again, but I don't think there's a concern right now. All right, so last year on the internships. How many of you have done an internship? Okay, excellent. How many of you are going to try and get an internship? Okay, always good saying that, please. I'll show you a few samples. I've probably hired about 22 interns from CSUN. Thank you. It's been very beneficial for the interns. It's actually beneficial for the other employees because it kind of jumpstarts everybody, gets them excited, new blood in there. But it's also good for the company because the company benefits with more up-to-date thought processes coming in with the interns. And really, I don't care if the interns stay with the company or not. It's really a win-win, for the company and the intern. Okay, so here's a couple of samples of real LinkedIn experience that I saw tied into internships. What do you think of it? Two different people. So this was one that did kind of interesting description stuff, but did an internship down in San Diego. Here's another one, young man I know that this was summer work, internship, summer job up in Santa Clarita. But this was the whole description. So what do you think? Pretty descriptive? Get me fired up, when I read it? No, it doesn't really say too much. So if I sit down with, in this case, this young man and say, hey, so did you lead any projects? Did you solve any problems? Did you save any money? Were you responsible for closing up operations, or, did you handle money? What kind of things did you do that we could translate into, hey, these are things that a hiring manager is looking for, or from a leadership standpoint that they're looking for future managers. This is the fleshing out that I talk about, tied into experience. So my son, I tried to convince him to come tonight, but he was busy with something else. My son did 2 internships at Marvin Engineering, aerospace company down in Inglewood. He worked in the IT department, and he had a very thin little description. I was an IT intern at Marvin Engineering for these 2 time periods. Well, when I asked him questions, okay, so did you have to present any projects to executive management? Oh yeah, he did. To the COO, to the VP of operations, to the chief technical officer. Did you have to train anybody? Well, yeah, you had to train somebody to help with setting up the intranet. Okay, so what was that? So again, as I asked him a few questions, there was a lot of substantial things that he had done, and they weren't showing it. So that's exactly the kind of stuff you guys can populate on your LinkedIn page. And you have to take off. Okay, so internship. So I think it's great for a hands-on experience. Of course, it's like anything. It's, what are you trying to get out of it? So some people look at an internship as it's just an opportunity to make a little money on the side. That's fine. It's always good to make some money. But you can leverage this stuff big time. Opportunity to get exposure to the messy side of things in business. So as you, transition from academic study to the business world, everything's messy. Everything does not work the way it's supposed to or the way you studied it. And that's important experience tied into an internship. It can act as a bridge to other positions. I'll show you a few examples where people transition to much, much bigger positions just because of the internship. Makes money, of course, that's good. And all of my past internships, that I mentioned, they all got exposed to industry segments that they weren't planning on getting into. And they found out they very often liked it and actually leveraged that further. Okay, so some other ones, participating in Evening with Industry, of course, is a great way to get exposed to companies that are possibly hiring for interns. Speak with other students that have already done internships. A lot of times the companies are not aggressively going after interns. Some of the bigger ones, Medtronic or Disney or companies like that, yeah, they may have formal programs. Other ones, it's an afterthought to them. So if somebody suggests this, internally and says, hey, it would be a good idea to have an intern. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, why don't we do that? That's how that stuff starts. So a lot of times you can make connections through your professors where companies aren't thinking about it, but they're open to it. Make sure your professors know you want to do an internship. So they get pinged. Hey, do you have anybody available? If they don't know you're interested, you may not be put forward for that kind of opportunity. And of course, message your LinkedIn connections. Again, you can leverage this, to possibly get internships. Any questions on internships? Okay, here's some of the folks from CSUN that I hired as interns. Sheila, she's now in London working for, I think actually Lockheed right now. Elizabeth Gates, she was head of the chapter here. Hired her as an intern at Bionis, a biomedical company. Gave her some projects. She leveraged that into aerospace. Brenda, she's with Lockheed there. So, of course, you guys know Brenda, right? All right, Michael Ostrel. He was an intern at the same time as Sheila over at Westco Aircraft. He's now up in the Bay Area, working for a software company. Laura Hernandez, she's over with Marvin Engineering, so she decided to stay there. So she turned her internship into a regular position on the supply chain side. Tomas, he's up in Palmdale working for Lockheed. So he was an intern at Westco. See a pattern here. All right, Charlotte, where she's over in Northrop. So she was an intern at Marvin Engineering. I'm not sure that was something she was planning on to begin with, but she was able to leverage that. And I've seen after the fact that Marvin is now a great proving ground for larger companies' hires. So they go, you got some interns there, you trained them up already? Yeah, I'll take them. So it works out very well for them. Not so much for Marvin sometimes, but Daisy, she's intern, I think currently still at Marvin. All right. So that's any questions on the internship stuff? It's all good. All right. So certifications. I don't know if everybody has seen this. So I sent this 2-year chapter to take a look at. This is interesting. They put this out annually. So APICS, CSUN. And it's interesting because it gives you a flavor for, from a certification standpoint, what's the dollar potential impact upside? So how much more can I make if I get a certification? And I think that's important because you guys are getting 4-year degrees. Right? Okay, so a 4-year degree, that's always my first preference when it comes to skill set because it's a whole package. These certifications are exciting because the certifications get more into the details. So people that get, let's say, the CPIM, they have a more detailed understanding of MRP, the planning system, work order travelers, things like that, which is something that could be leveraged across, let's say, a manufacturing company. CSCP, more detailed, and it leverages the teaching that's done at CSUN, but leverages it tied into more detailed focus on supply chain risk and management and such. And this one, which is a newer one, which you might go, I would even look at that one, logistics, transportation, distribution. So a good example of that is Westco Aircraft. Westco Aircraft's a distributor, very large aerospace distributor. They hire a lot of supply chain people, but their whole business is buying hardware, stocking it, selling it. So you look at that, it's really distribution with a heavy emphasis on supply chain procurement, meaning making smart buys in order to get the lowest price so they can stock it, make a good profit. Very simple focus, as far as business structure. But it's a billion-dollar company. So they make a lot of money off these nuts, bolts, screws, and O-rings tied into aircraft. So it's a good example of how these different certifications feed into these different industry segments. I get a lot of questions tied into APICS certifications, and the same thing applies to ASQ certifications. See, I got ASQ. ASQ certifications, SME, you name it. So the certifications are, from a hiring manager standpoint, an additional indication of how serious the person is about their industry focus, their career focus. If I get somebody that graduates with an SOM degree that also has a CPIM or CSCP, I'm blown away. Because I go, wow, this person really went to the next step immediately while the information was still fresh. I went after that certification. So that's extremely attractive from a hiring manager standpoint. Of course, the certification's more work, right? Maybe more classes, more studying, and an additional few $1,000s. But the payoff for certifications is immense. So when I get that simple question from folks of, hey, should I, and it usually happens after they graduate, and I get them as interns, they go, should I do something else now? Should I do something additional? Yeah, if you've got the bandwidth, if you're not burned out from studying too much, and if you've got a little extra money, going after a certification now is perfect timing. because the information is still fresh. It's not that difficult to self-study for these certifications because they're tied completely into your major. So again, it's something to consider because it gives you, again, one leg up in the competition for jobs out there. And these large companies, they pay a lot of attention to the acronyms after your name. So if you've got CPIM or CSCP, they look at that. And going back to LinkedIn, they'll do their search tied into these certifications. They look specifically for, hey, I'm looking for people that have a 4-year degree and CSCP. Here, it gets narrowed down very quickly. So again, great opportunity, and did I say it pays more? Yes. So you can make more money. All right. So again, this is what it signals to me as far as the person coming in with this certification. My son, who's I think going to transfer over to CSUN to finish off his 4-year degree, I'm advising him at this stage, hey, if you've got some bandwidth, why don't you go after the CPIM, which you don't have to have a 4-year degree yet for that, and get that under your belt. Because I know for sure if he shows that in his resume when he graduates, he won't have too much competition out there that has that same set of qualifications, plus his internship. So the combination of degree, internship, and possibly certification is a world-beating combination. No guarantees, but I would hire those people. Okay, so the combination I think is great. I always like to touch on some freebies. How many of you have a need for Office, Microsoft Office program on your laptop or desktop or whatever you're using? Okay, so this LibreOffice does everything Microsoft Office does. Opens up the documents in Microsoft Office format and can save them in the same formats for free. So it gets updated continuously. It's got the Word, Excel, presentation, you name it, formats in there as far as individual programs. It's been out there for years and years, so I like freebies. Second one, if you use PowerPoint a lot, this one is great. PowerPoint Labs. It's developed in Singapore. I think it's Singapore University. And they keep updating that. It's an enhancement for PowerPoint. It does all kinds of fancy things to your presentations. Gives it lots more bling, if you will. XMind, I use this extensively for mind mapping. I mentioned it in the book. It's a great tool going back to showing that you can use these kinds of tools in the workplace. This is fantastic. And last, usually when you guys are getting your 4-year degree, with business emphasis, supply chain emphasis, eventually you're going into management. So this Manager Tools podcast, I think, is a great resource for a free podcast tied into the problems you run into in business, how to do reviews, how to manage upstream, downstream, how to do reviews for your direct reports, how to do your own review, how to basically plan out everything tied into business. Very high quality and free. So I think they have an app too, but it's got an app. So I would also advise checking into that. Any questions?
So I'm debating if it's like if I should go to grad school to get an MBA, but do you think that certifications are just as good compared to going and getting your MBA?
No, I would recommend the MBA first. So a 4-year degree is great. Master's opens up many more doors, and a lot of higher management positions, they just automatically look for a master's. Do they use the master's? No, but they're looking for it. So as far as it being on your resume and getting to different opportunities, I would recommend master's. Now that being said, again, the certifications are I think another addition to your toolkit. And if you're not going for a master's, I think it's definitely good. Anybody else? No questions?
For the logistics and transportation and distribution, how come you mentioned that you would go through that instead of the other two?
So the logistics, transportation and distribution is a newer one, so it's not as familiar. It's focused more on the, what we will call the back end of the company, which is the shipping and receiving departments, as well as the warehouse. So it's a little bit of a bolt-on to APICS. I think it's good, and actually I'm going to start teaching a certification class for that, probably at the College of the Canyons. But it's just a newer one. So CPIM is much more, I'll say, older and much more out there. CSCP is now very recognized. The ISM ones are very good too, so I don't want to make you guys think that APICS has a lock on all this. The ISM certifications are great. The ASQ certifications are great. They're much more technical. In fact, I was going to mention that the ASQ certifications, because I always have to interface heavily with the quality department within the companies I'm at. They're always looking for leadership within those functions that has these certifications. And they have trouble finding it because a lot of quality people develop through the company, are promoted from within. So they don't necessarily have the educational background that you would want for manager, director, VP. So it's another opportunity. But that's the same problem that I see for supply chain. A lot of supply chain people, grow within the company and get promoted from within, and then they grow up to a point where they can't get beyond that because they don't have the tools necessary to handle supply chain risk, the tools necessary to negotiate with international supply chain, the ability to convince executive management, here's why we need to do X, Y, and Z with these suppliers. A little example from my own background is in Marvin. When I first got there, I took a look at their supply chain side, and they were buying hardware similar to what we were dealing with at Wesco Aircraft, but they were dealing with 50 different hardware manufacturers, most of them in Southern California. So if I just say that the purchasing department within Marvin was dealing with 50 little manufacturing companies, and sometimes a little, but 50 little companies, what would that indicate to you? Is that a smart use of supply chain resources at Marvin, where they have to buy much more complex stuff too? Does it make sense to have buyers and supply chain people paying attention to nuts, bolts, rivets, O-rings, that kind of stuff? No. But that's how they've been doing it for 55 years. And I think that emphasizes why some of the educational background you guys are getting opens up things for companies like Marvin or Wesco or whatever, where you start asking questions and go, wait, so we're spending all of this energy with 50 individual companies, why don't we consolidate them? Why don't we set up an LTA with a distributor where that's all they do? And oh, by the way, they'll stock for us. And we can lock in the pricing. And I could rededicate those supply chain people, the procurement people, to machine parts or electronic assemblies or more complex issues. That's what we did. But again, they would have never considered it prior to me coming on board. And that's the value you guys can bring, to companies when you come in there with your knowledge. Of course, you have to raise your hand and go, I think we got a problem here, or a problem there. On the quality side, I'll throw out one other Marvin example. So Marvin deals with 5 large international partners for the Joint Strike Fighter. And these 5 international partners make complex sub-assemblies for Marvin. And they've been making them for Marvin for 15 years, since the beginning of the program. Now the parts would come in to Marvin, and for some reason, they wouldn't get inspected as they came in to Marvin. And now you might think that's no big deal. You know, these are big companies that are making the parts, they have good quality departments. It shouldn't be a problem. But why it was a big deal is that if any problems were detected, they wouldn't be detected until assembly or test. So as a consequence, for practical purposes, I looked at it, so well, it looks like our shop floor, where we do the assembly, is our incoming inspection for practical purposes. I think we need to get away from that because it's tying up our people, it's stopping work, it's producing problems. And oh, by the way, since these are international partners, we don't have time to recover. We can't send the parts back to Denmark or Turkey or wherever it happens to be. We have to fix it right now to keep these orders moving. So the quality department said, well, okay, I think we need to start, moving in the direction of inspecting the product when it gets here. We have to build in lead time to do that. We have to train people, all of these other things. Well, that's an ASQ issue. That's in the quality realm where quality people with, the training you guys get or with the certification training would ask those questions and go, oh, wait, you're doing what? No. Is there a better way of doing this that saves us money and helps us to reduce lead time and, on. And that's exactly the value you guys bring, to the table with the certifications or degrees. So if your mind is working that way when you get into the workforce or do your internships, you can really be superstars. Might have to push a little bit or ask some questions, but that's part of, the internship is doing that kind of thing. And the fact I threw out a couple examples, every single company I've been at has significant problems that your degrees and the certifications can help to solve. And that's without exception. Every single company. So you might think there's these great Ford Motor Company or Boeing or whatever, or maybe not Boeing with the 737 MAX problem, but all these large companies, and you're going, oh, they must have this stuff dialed in. They do not. It's surprising how consistent the problems are I run into. Every company I work at, inventory problems, inventory accuracy problems, quality problems, training problems, standard work problems, difficulty training employee problems, not staying up and current with technology. All kinds of problems working with their external factory, their suppliers. Every company has significant problems there. Why do you think that is?
I feel like supply chain is like a relatively new degree and so little experience offered. So it's like what you said, like most people just like rose up like in the ranks, so they don't have kind of like that analytical like knowledge like, based off other companies, how we do like case studies and kind of learn all this stuff. So like because they don't have a lot of people with this degree, I feel like they just don't have like that oversight.
Very, very true. Most of the companies I've been at, supply chain evolved from being just a buyer or a purchasing agent. So these people would send purchase orders out to a supplier and try and get the order in on time, or maybe even earlier, and they would negotiate the pricing and all that. That was the supply chain. And maybe some people will go out and negotiate with those suppliers to try and get better deals and that kind of thing. A lot of companies are still in that groove, where it's the buyer who is the supply chain. So they haven't gotten to the point of going, well, this is for practical purposes, our factory out there. And if they're not successful, we're not successful. And if they raise their prices, our margin goes down. And if they have equipment go down or strikes, we're in trouble. All of it, coronavirus, not a good example. So all of these kinds of things are things that a lot of companies, to your point, have not invested time and energy or skill sets in tackling. And I've always been blown away by each company I come into. It's like clockwork. Any company I can go in and it's like, okay, I'm going to go in and the inventory isn't quite the way it should be. I've been in companies where I come in there and the warehouse is not locked down. So they may have millions of dollars worth of parts and components and materials in the warehouse, but it's not locked down. And what does that mean? That means anybody can go in there like it's Trader Joe's with a little basket and shop for stuff. And that might seem funny, but most of the companies I work at are engineers or planners. And they go in there and they go, I just want to check something out and see if there's a problem with it. They take the part and it never comes back. And nothing nefarious, but it's surprising how consistent that kind of problem is. And I walk in and I go, why isn't this locked off? I mean, why don't we control access to only those people that should have access to the warehouse? What? I mean, I've had that reaction from ownership of the company. Well, why would we do that? Because we can't get accurate inventory until we control access to the inventory. Wait, and I've had them tell me, let me get my head around this. And then it's not to make fun of them, it's that this is how much opportunity there is for you guys to make a change and have an impact on these companies. And it's, again, it's not any particular company. I worked at Bioness. They had a division over in Israel. All kinds of problems there. They were crazy. I worked at small, what you might consider startup companies. All kinds of problems there. I worked at multinational companies that were owned by British large corporations and very primitive processes there. You can look at my YouTube video I put up on inventory reduction. One of the companies I worked at, I got there and I stayed there a few years. The inventory, because I was responsible for purchasing materials and inventory, the inventory was going like this. They were okay with it because sales was going like this. And that's okay. I mean, you could be okay with it. But we put in place an inventory team and optimization. We drove the inventory down like this. At the same time, sales kept going like that. What do you think happened?
More cash.
Cash flow went crazy. So executive management was like, whoa, it's big because we have this magic cash flow and we're doing it at the same time, we're increasing sales. We're lowering inventory. And oh, by the way, the salespeople were nervous at first because they were afraid of what? Lower inventory. What do you think they were afraid of?
Yeah, demand going down.
Yeah, they were afraid of not having the parts they need to sell when they needed to sell it. Because salespeople always want lots of inventory to make sure they can make a sale. Well, we had to sweet talk them through it. Sales was not affected at all. So a huge reduction in inventory without affecting sales. Where else is that opportunity? Wesco had the same problem. Yeah, it was a distributor. They bought it cheap and stocked it deep. But their inventory, same deal. Did it have to be like that? No. So that goes to supply chain, where, setting up the right kind of buys, long-term agreements, blanket orders, things you guys get exposed to. Completely new idea to a lot of companies. So I emphasize this because the opportunities in your field of study are crazy. And it's with some very big companies. So lots of great opportunities for you guys to be superstars in those companies. And if you want to make $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year, $250,000, you need to get into management. But those opportunities are there for supply chain, for operations, even for quality. And I'm not afraid of talking about the money side because that's also, for some reason, a little bit of a hidden element. Because even the APICS report is not truly reflecting, because a lot of people don't tell them what they're really making. It's not truly reflecting how much money you can actually make. You can make some serious coin with these degrees. But again, the stepping stone is I think internship, getting exposed to these companies any way you can, and then leveraging that. Because all of these people that I showed you, they became attractive. Why? Why did they become attractive to Boeing, Northrop, Lockheed? Because they were already in an aerospace company. It's almost like they already had some kind of proven tattoo or something. I don't know. But these other companies, because they're kind of lazy on searching for people, go, oh, okay, there's already degreed supply chain people with experience at this smaller aerospace company. I'm going to get them. And it's not hard for them to get them. They just pay them. So again, lots of opportunities. Any other questions? I can go on with that. And I'm Mr. War Story too, because each company I work at, I get at least 5 to 10 war stories coming out of those companies. I've seen crazy stuff. I've made lots of improvements, and a lot of it I think was due to the things you guys are learning. And I guess being comfortable when you get into those companies with experimenting. Because I'll throw that in there too. Again, I can talk for a long time. You need to be comfortable experimenting when you get into an internship or in a company. And by experimenting, I mean the free tools, the brainstorming, the using an A3, doing analysis on inventory, breaking it down, forecasts, all of those kinds of things companies aren't used to. And they're typically not going to tell you, Cheyenne, I want you to do an inventory analysis, break it down into buckets, and do a pivot table on that. They probably won't tell you. But if you do it and you present that, they're going to go, whoa, this is awesome. I'm telling you, you guys experiment with these things. It may not get picked up at that company. They may go, whatever. Did you learn that in some kind of book? Yeah, that's a quote. I've actually picked it up. But a lot of them, if they're, smart management, they'll go, this is a keeper. This is great. We want more of that. The ones that don't, okay, maybe not be the right company for you. But the fact you did it and got experience, again, goes back to leveraging that going forward. So I've got to think. So another suggestion, as you go through your career, keep sanitized samples of what you've done. What does that mean? So if you work on an inventory reduction project, you don't have to include all the part numbers and the name of the company. All you have to show is here's a graph, here's the data over time that I analyzed, here's the project, and here's what we did with it. You can sanitize it, and now it becomes something you can use as a sample in your portfolio, going back to the little book, to show what you do. And if you have to lead a project, same deal. If you've developed people and they've gone on to other things, same deal. If you've solved significant problems, same thing. So I can't overemphasize the keeping samples aspect. I may be kind of geeky and nerdy as far as, I want to see how I can use A3 templates, for projects or mind maps. I love mind maps. So how can I use mind map for brainstorming with my buyers? So we do it and I show them how it works. But now that becomes a tool in my toolkit, and also something I can show, well, management, executive management, here's what we did, here's all the things we dug into. Super persuasive. Much more so than me just talking. Because, the proverbial talk is cheap. That's why my voice goes in. Talk is cheap, it's so true. When you get into companies, everybody's talking a good game. And a lot of them, they know what they're talking about. But it's so much more persuasive to show data, to show facts, to show samples. And going back to interviews, how many people do you think come in for interviews with me and have samples of what they've done? Probably 1 or 2 out of the 100 I've interviewed. So, again, the little book, that's one of the purposes. I think you need to look at the interview just like an artist. So an artist, if they go in for an interview, they don't come in empty-handed. They come in with photos, portfolio, samples of their work. Why don't we? We need to do that. Because otherwise, it's just your resume. And frankly, they all look the same. Everybody walks on water. They do great things. They've worked miracles. They blessed us, and stuff grew out of a rock and that kind of stuff. Now somebody comes in with samples. The conversation goes to the sample. So when I'm in a good interview, and they go, "So how have you tackled? What's a problem you tackled? Well, here's a sample of one I tackled, and here's how I did and all that." Okay. Changes the whole conversation. And it also puts you in control of the conversation and the interview. Because now you're talking about your stuff. It's not this pie in the sky, VP talking to you going, "Well, and tell you how you handle this hypothetical, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's an example of how I really did handle it. Or how I tackled something and saved lots of money. Here's how I work with my direct reports. Here's how I develop them. Here's how I mentor them." All of that kind of stuff, you can have samples. And it doesn't have to be just putting it in. After an interview, a lot of times I'll put a link in the thank you email and say, "Hey, here's a couple of YouTube videos I put up on some of the topics we talked about." Who else do you think does that? Nobody. So it's an opportunity again for you to put that information out there and, tie people back into what you do well. Now, it's not that you'll have to do YouTube videos or go crazy on stuff, but these are all tools you can leverage. Now, to the extent you feel like doing it, I'm happy. And if you want more advice in the future, just reach out to me. But definitely connect with me on LinkedIn so you can leverage my connections. If you want to go through my LinkedIn page, I got a lot of stuff on there. And you get a feel for, oh, this is how Dan does it. And maybe you get some ideas on how you can do it. Show me up. Make me look bad. It'll be perfect. I'd be so happy. Any other questions? Best of luck, guys. And if you want to transmit any of this to the other students, I know everybody's busy and you have a lot of peers in the school. The APICS chapter is a great resource. So I didn't talk too much about that. Those of you that may not, again, I can keep going. Those of you that may not have an internship opportunity and are going, "Wow, I can't line something up, or something that works for me." You can use APICS. You can use the local chapter as an opportunity. Now, how do you do that? Our local chapter, we have a budget. We're not for profit. We have more projects than we have people to do them. So everybody is always coming up with ideas. Me too. So I'm always coming up with, "Oh, we should do classes in Spanish. We should do this. We should do that." But we don't have enough people to take on these projects. Now, why would I mention this to you guys? Because it's an opportunity to take on a chapter project and take on a function within the chapter. And they feed you when you show up. Take on a function. And now the board members of the chapter become references. You can use those as samples of what you've done. And you really get real experience, tied into business. So it's a sneaky way of using APICS chapter, almost like it's an internship, to get leadership experience, to get technical experience, because we don't have people to do the analysis on our membership numbers, to help us with, our website, to help us with programs and reaching out to companies. All of those are little projects where we would love to have students, if they had the bandwidth, formally come and help us, and we will give them no end of credit and reference tied into that. I'd be happy as hell to write a good reference for people doing that.
How can we get more information, or who will we reach out to about volunteer experiences?
So myself, Amanda, who's the chapter president, show up at one meetings. You guys are welcome to come to any of the APICS board meetings, which are once a month. They rotate between Orange Bistro, which I think is an excellent, and up at College of the Canyons. They go back and forth. But you don't need an invitation. Just look on the APICS chapter calendar and show up. I'll make sure you're welcome. And we'll feed you. If you want to let me know ahead of time, we'll make sure there's more food. I would be so happy to have, 5 students show up and say, hey, Dan said we can be assigned some stuff and help on stuff. We'd be blown away. But I mentioned it because it's a way to use that as an additional, think how that looks in a resume. Oh, I was on the board of directors for this chapter. I took on these special projects. Here's what I helped them to accomplish. It's no different than what you do in a company. And the APICS chapter is a small company. It's just a not-for-profit. Now, of course, we got gray hair. So you have to put up with a bit of that. But what I've used the APICS chapter for is experimentation. So I played with it. YouTube videos, analyzing data tied into membership, putting together new classes. Those were all experiments. And they let you. They're like, yeah, okay, knock yourself out. You want to do that? Yeah, here's a budget. Go ahead and do it. They let you do it. And you get all the credit. So, can't beat it. It's a secret. Please spread it out there. Again, there's, the way my head works is I look at what opportunities there are for you guys to leverage that I didn't have coming out of college. Nobody explained this stuff to me. Nobody told me how to do interviews. There was no LinkedIn. Oh, wait, I'm dating myself. So there weren't all these tools. Software was pretty wimpy. I accidentally found out about APICS. So it was actually a CSUN professor that mentioned it, and I thought, what the hell is that? And then one of the board members said, well, why don't you come to one of the meetings? I'm like, a board of directors meeting? That sounds kind of intimidating. And wow, I show up, it's a bunch of old people talking about business and manufacturing and that kind of stuff. Okay. Very welcoming. No commitments. Okay, cool. As a side thing, tied into the certifications, I've taught on the side about 75 classes for the chapter, for CSUN, for COC, for Boeing, for local companies. So 75 courses, 10 weeks each, on the side. So with my last classes, how much do you think we got paid per hour to teach those classes? 100 an hour? Yes, 100 an hour. So again, it's not going to make or break the world, but it's nice side money. And of course, I had to get certification. I had to teach so many classes, all that. But that's also a side benefit you get out of the chapter and participation in the chapter, because they're the ones that qualify instructors to teach the certification classes. So yeah, $100 an hour when you get to master instructor. And but there's another secret benefit that comes out of it. And it probably works the same for her as professors at CSUN. Anybody that's doing the teaching comes across as the expert. It's like kind of a built-in element. So if you teach classes of people at a company or people from different companies, they look at you as an expert because you kind of become an expert. And it's amazing jobs come out of that too. So one of my first aerospace jobs came out of teaching an APICS course where the people in the class had been managers at an aerospace company, which is now PPG Aerospace. And they went back to work after the class and go, I think we need somebody like that. And this guy seems to really know his stuff. So they made me a job offer out of blue for distribution requirements and planning manager. I never heard of that. But I researched it, basically MRP, spread out to your distribution network. That can help. So that became my first aerospace position as a manager of it. I wasn't looking for it. Didn't think that was the furthest thing from my mind that would come out of teaching a class. But I've had a number of opportunities like that come out of teaching. And I've had people that I've hired that happen to be students in my classes from different companies. Because I also got to see a little bit of, what they were and what they were capable of and how we thought. I go, there's one keeper, well, this was really good. So I would reach out to them later and say, we got a position for a planner, buyer, supervisor on the shop floor. And opportunities have come up with that too. So again, there's just a broad range of things tied into these topics. Anything else? I've run over time. Other questions? All right. See you guys. Best of luck. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to walk across and disrupt.
So
recently,
you're welcome, very welcome.
How are you, Alex? Thanks.
No.
And I was thinking myself about whatever else is coming, like comes to
Well, I mean, my general advice is something at the end is always better than something at the beginning. And there's nothing ever to stop you from your work as a position, and something really good comes up. I mean, I've changed the crazy number of so I don't know, it's not lost count. And it really comes down to what's best for your employer. So if you've done something that you're not loving, from more prestigious,
Yeah, I just feel like very good like doing that. For my life.
and companies never feel really, they lay you off. One minute to the other way.
It was all.
Lately, I've been kind of obsessed with like
Normally the notice is because transition is about
I mean, like, here's the thing. I see that like
much better came through.
blocking
I
my
love you
ear.
guys, but
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It was like a spy. Hey, good luck. What's your plans? Basically, so he shot for spy plans. So they built it. They built it this obviously under Irving Airport. That's what they call the Skunk Works. And
well, I mean,
never shoot it
to be
down.
honest, it might be.
Okay.
Do you want to help with the water voices?
I know.
Okay, because
Are
there's.
looking for Excel skills and other software. Don't show that they really know. Yeah, that's fine. And it just usually better to find into, let's say, it's does something. Okay, so here's how I did the analysis.
So sorry, give me one second.
Oh, yes, for sure.
And if you can show you've done, different scenario analyses and things like that, they will love it. So, no, that's graphs, they love graphs too, because a lot of times people you're interviewing with have no graphing skills. So it might seem stupid, but some nice graphs that always kicks in.
My name is Bill.
Sure.
I have an internship this summer at Amazon in the
Okay.
distribution center.
Excellent.
They told us not to prepare.
in any way. So would you say that I should cheat on my training?
Good, how are you?
Spencer.
Andre, nice to meet you. Yeah.
What's your major? Are you some?
I,
Oh,
well,
so
today.
you can change supply chain and marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's one of
I'm
those.
going for an interview.
Oh,
And tell them,
I just like heard about.
you know, don't be.
I was.
I'm already going for this certification. I'm in the middle of studying for it. Classes.
Sorry, yes.
And communicate
I was there.